And now it's time for us to discuss more of the headlines and simple keywords with Adam joining us via Zoom. Good morning, Adam.
Well, good morning, Lena. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday indeed. Happy Saturday Eve to you. So Vice President of the United States has been in South Korea. Well, she was here for 24 hours. It was a short one-day trip, but it turns out a lot can happen from it. Let's take our listeners there first. This is our first keyword of the day.
IRA concerns.
So President Yoon and U.S. Vice President Harris have discussed Seoul's worries about the Inflation Reduction Act and North Korea's latest missile launches. What's the latest?
Yeah, so she was here for just 24 hours, but it was a very packed schedule indeed, a trip to DMZ as well. But during the talks with Yoon, the South Korean president raised Korea's concerns over the IRA. Yoon reiterated South Korea's concerns that the law will hurt Korean car makers by, of course, giving tax credits only to electric vehicles assembled in North Korea.
North America. North America.
North America. Excuse me. I apologize. Yeah, that's because Korean car makers don't really make electric vehicles in the US. They make other cars, but not electric vehicles. And the US is an important market for them. So, of course, they are concerned. Yoon said he expects the two countries to work closely together to reach a mutually satisfactory agreement. Now, in response, Harris said that both she and Joe Biden were, quote, well aware of Seoul's concerns. She said she will make efforts to address Seoul's concerns during the process of enforcing the law. Now, Korea fears the law will act as a significant trade barrier for its automakers until Hyundai Motor begins production at its electric vehicle plant in Georgia in 2025. So there's still a ways to go until that actually happens. For the time being, still, electric vehicles are made and produced in Korea and exported to the US. Harris's remarks are in line pretty much with a commitment Biden made to Yoon actually during their meetings in London and New York last week. So we'll have to see what kind of concessions, if any, are made.
All right, let's take a look at what else was discussed between President Yoon Suk-yeol and U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris. Of course, security on the Korean Peninsula came up naturally.
Right. So he said, the presidential spokesperson said Yoon and Harris met for 85 minutes at the presidential office and discussed a wide range of issues. They both expressed serious concerns about Pyongyang's recent ballistic missile launch, which we'll be getting onto shortly, as well as the enactment of its nuclear force policy. Harris reaffirmed the United States' ironclad defense commitment to South Korea. She noted that the two countries are in close consultation to strengthen the combined defense posture, including extended deterrence. Yoon and Harris also referred to the Korean president's hot mic moment in New York. During their talks, Harris said the United States, quote, does not care at all about the controversy, interestingly. And she added Biden said he had deep trust in Yoon and was satisfied with their meetings in London and New York last week. So it seems like the US isn't really fazed by the controversy over Yoon's apparent use of profanity, if you will. And they also discussed cooperation in financial stability, space and climate change. And Harris also extended an invitation to Yoon to visit the United States next year to mark the 70th anniversary of the alliance. And they also agreed to discuss further details through diplomatic channels.
All right, which brings us, as you alluded to, our second keyword of the day.
Another missile test.
So North Korea carried out another banned missile test just hours after the visit by Kamala Harris. Of course, timing is never a coincidence. Run us through the details of what happened.
Yeah, so yes, another provocation by the regime. Two short-range ballistic missiles again were fired into the sea off the northeast coast. They were fired between 8:48 p.m. and 8:57 p.m. yesterday. It's the third such breach of UN sanctions this week. The North fired an SRBM on Sunday and two SRBMs on Wednesday. So it's just as many missile tests in as many days. And this has been a record year for missile tests in North Korea. And the latest launches are kind of timed, experts say, to kind of send a message. And they also come, of course, as South Korea and the US have been holding joint naval drills this week. Now, the Joint Chiefs of Staff said it maintains full preparedness while working closely with the US. The military did not give details of the travel range, height, and speed of the missiles, or the latest missiles. Seoul and Washington, they have been cranking up security coordination amid concerns that Pyongyang could engage in provocative acts such as a nuclear experiment and also a submarine launched missile test. Meanwhile, South Korea, the United States, and Japan will be holding trilateral anti submarine drills in the international waters off the East Sea today. South Korea's Munmu, the Great destroyer, and the USS Ronald Reagan aircraft carrier and its strike group are expected to be joined by an Asahi-class destroyer from Japan in the training. It is the first such naval training between the three sides in 5 years. Of course, North Korea won't be happy with that as well. So we could expect more provocations coming out from the regime.
All right, let's move on to our third keyword of the day.
Foreign Minister dismissal.
So the Democratic Party has pushed through a motion through the National Assembly calling for the dismissal of Foreign Minister Park Jin for what happened in New York. This is in response to what the DP deems diplomatic gaffes, again, during that overseas trip for President Yoon. The PPP doesn't necessarily agree.
Right, so some more parliamentary bickering going on. The DP wants Park to take responsibility for Yoon's what it deems trouble-plagued diplomatic tour, including that hot mic moment, of course. The People Power Party protested the motion and boycotted the vote yesterday evening. A plenary session convened at 6 p.m. after the DP, which holds a majority, and the PPP wrangled all day to come to a consensus on the motion. Chu Young, the PPP's floor leader, earlier met the National Assembly Speaker Kim Jin-pyo and asked him not to put the motion to a vote. The DP floor leader, Park Hong-gun, in turn appealed for Kim to put the motion to a vote, and it passed, eventually went to the floor, and it passed with 168 votes for, 1 against, and 1 abstention. Both parties differ on whom to blame for Yoon's profane hot mic moment. The PPP wants to blame broadcaster NBC for what it deems is misreporting Yoon's comments. Still, the motion is not legally binding and may be cast aside by the president. While that may be the case, it could still, of course, have political implications in an already deeply divided National Assembly. And Yoon was actually full of praise for his foreign minister when asked about the motion by reporters yesterday morning, signaling he will likely not comply with the motion once it has passed.
As you've said, it's not legally binding. It's a recommendation if you think about it. However, at least based on what we know so far, because we haven't heard directly from the top office on the motion, but still. We'll wait and see. Let's move on to the energy crisis here at home for us too. Our fourth keyword of the day.
Electricity bill.
Everything is more expensive. That is just the consensus for the year. The government is set to announce the electricity rates for the fourth quarter in hopes of alleviating the situation, if it can be helped, that is. What can we expect?
Right. Well, the most likely outcome, of course, is that electricity rates and bills will be increased. It will be getting more expensive. An announcement of the details will be made later today. So eyes will be on that. It has already actually been delayed with the announcement initially due last week. In fact, that's because the delay came as the finance and energy ministries, they couldn't really iron out their differences. And the indecision kind of underscores the dilemma over electricity rates with ever increasing energy prices, geopolitical issues as well, influencing them as well. Now, electricity bills, they must better reflect the spike in imported energy prices, but at the same time, the government also must consider the public lives hardened by the rapid rises in consumer prices, including food prices as well. The Korea Electric Power Corporation also sinks deeper in debt and deficit as well, which is increasing, led to an increased call for the rate to be increased as well. An estimate showed that each 4-member household would have to pay 80,000 won more each month in electricity bills to kind of lessen the losses for KEPCO. Whether it will be that amount remains to be seen. We'll have to keep our eyes peeled and for later today. So, yeah, it is likely to be increased in today's announcement. How much of an increase that will be we'll have to keep our eyes peeled. There are concerns that it will be a large spike,
Right.
but that's because the Prime Minister Han Duck-soo has called for the electricity bills to be increased significantly. He said Korea's electricity bills are much cheaper when compared to other countries. He said that it's basically half of that of Germany's,
Mm,
for example.
mm,
And he stressed that Korea needs to follow the global trends. So
mm.
whether the relevant authorities heed those words, we'll have to, of course, watch out for that announcement. But an increase is pretty much the possibility.
Let's move on to our final keyword of the day.
Aging population.
So, recent data shows that a number of people aged 65 and older in Korea has surpassed the 9 million mark. It seems to be another important milestone. This is yet again adding to concerns over the country's rapidly aging population. I think rapidly being another key word. It is perhaps a global trend in developed countries. However, how quickly is it happening? Tell us the details.
Yeah, these are unfortunately some terms that are synonymous to Korea. Rapid aging
Yeah.
and a low birth rate has been like that for years now. Now, that milestone of passing the 9 million mark means that people aged 65 and older made up 17.5% of the country's population this year. Statistics Korea projects that seniors will account for 20% of the population, making it a so-called super A society by the year 2025. At that pace, it'll have taken only 7 years for the country to go from an A society to a super A society.
Mm,
That's much faster than other advanced economies such as the UK and the US, where once they make that transition, it's expected to have taken 50 and 15 years, respectively. So it just goes to show how rapidly the population is aging.
mm,
Meanwhile, the data also shows that more than half of seniors want to actually keep working as well. Most of them, of course, mainly to cover their living expenses, which brings about another question of is senior welfare adequate enough in the country
mm.
as well?
Are we prepared for a super age society? I mean, it's not just about, I guess, encouraging the young to have children. It is also about having the right infrastructure for a super age society, for example. Maybe this is an obvious point, but if you go to rural areas, parts of South Korean Peninsula, you can already see that a super age society is evident there.
Right.
We'll leave it there for now. Yes, the same narrative, but every time there's a
Mhm.
milestone, we'll have to bring it up again. Thank you so much, Adam, for a week's worth of coverage. I hope you feel better.
I am feeling much better. Thank you for asking, by the way.
See you next week, Adam.
Have a wonderful weekend. See you next week.
If you're listening to our program using the podcast service, just a reminder that we do go live Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. Korea Standard Time. So tune in and help us make the show more informative by giving us your input. See you bright and early on Good Morning Seoul.